Greetings and welcome to the latest episode of Preserve the 80s. We're actually doing things a little bit backwards because we will be making eggplant parmesan. But as you'll find out when the later segments of this video are seen, that the eggplant parmesan has already been made. Well, it was made about a month ago, but I didn't film the earliest steps of the process, so I'll be doing that now, which explains why I'm wearing a different shirt and why I have longer hair, well, of the hair that I have remaining, than I did in the previous video. This Willie Nelson Museum shirt I got when I was in Nashville 2 years ago. I was at the Willie Nelson Museum and there was a power failure and there really were not many windows around, so the whole place went black and whoever was in charge of the room screamed, "Nobody move, everybody stay absolutely still until the lights come back on." It was about 5 minutes or so. It was a unusual experience. But at this point, it's time to move things along and show you the first steps to making eggplant parmesan, which were not included in the segments that you will see later. Obviously, you want to slice it up. There's a few different ways you can go. You can go with lengthwise strips if you want a more lasagna-like effect. If you want to just save time though, you can just cut up in circles, which is what I'll be doing today. Even though I do prefer the strips to the circles, but this is just easier and also is what I did in the later segments, so it will more accurately reflect the eggplant parmesan that you will see. You don't want the slices to be too thick. They get too thick, they get a bit watery, they get a bit of a unpleasant texture when it's time to eat, and they take longer to cook through, so you don't want them so thin that they're, I guess I would say weak, but you want them to be relatively thin. I would say that this is about the thickness that you should be going for. Now I'll be putting them on these trays after they're cut because this is where they will be salted. And as I say in nearly every cooking video, it really would not make a whole lot of sense to film the entire cutting process because once you've seen me cut one eggplant, you might as well have seen me do all of them. So I'll skip ahead to the salting for this half. Just take regular table salt. Sprinkle some into your hand and just let go on top of the slices of eggplant. You can also turn them over then so you get both sides. And once that's done, you can just cover up your tray of eggplant with paper towels. And people will say different things. Some people will say you don't need to salt it at all. Some people will say salt it for an hour. Some people will say let it sit out overnight. Typically I will salt them for an hour or two. What that does, it draws a bit of the moisture out, so when it's cooking, when it cooks, they'll come out softer. They'll be more flavorful. They won't be as watery and semi-hard when you bite into them. It's not good when that happens, so that is why we do the salting. But unless you're making massive amounts, I would say that a full 24 hours is not necessary, but it's a way to go. If that's how you like to do it, you can. So I'll cease filming for now, and then the final installment to film will be the breading of the eggplant. And then I will put everything together and edit it and publish it. And that is about all there is to say for this segment. Farewell. And I am joining you once again for the second part of the video, which is actually the last filmed. This is where we will coat and cook the eggplant slices before making the eggplant parmesan. Some people like to some people like to fry their eggplant, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you don't want to fry it for whatever reason, or if baking is just easier for you, I'm going to show you how to do that. So you have your salted eggplant slices that have had their time in the salt that's needed. You will want Italian-style breadcrumbs. The brand doesn't matter. I like 4C, but Food Club, which is, I believe, the Big Y brand, is perfectly acceptable as well. Just pour it into a large bowl. Then you just want a regular sized bowl in which you can whisk some eggs up until the yolk and the white are thoroughly blended. And then you will dip the eggplant slices into the egg yolk mixture before putting it into the breadcrumbs. That will help it to adhere to the eggplant. There's an eggshell in there. I think I got it. Now it is time for egg number 2. I'm notoriously bad at cracking eggs. I can never do it without making a large mess and getting shucks everywhere and into the food. And then you just take a whisk, stir it around. You want to do more of a back and forth than an all-around stir, just for the most effective blending. It also helps you to avoid a mess if you stir it around in a circle too quickly. Egg yolk could go everywhere, raw eggs, and nobody wants that. So as I said before, you just take one of your eggplant slices, dip it into the beaten eggs, and put it in your bowl of breadcrumbs. It's finely coated like that. And just put it on the tray that you want to very lightly grease, because you don't want the grease to, the flavor of, well, not the grease, but, well, I mean, you could use grease if you wanted to. Nobody is saying that you cannot. But typically it will be some type of vegetable oil or spray, or in this case it's butter flavored spray. But you don't want to put too much on there, because you don't want it to get into the eggplant. You don't want the eggplant to absorb the flavor of whatever you lubricated the pans with. But you do need to have a little bit on there, or else the breadcrumbs will stick. It'll be messy to clean up, and your eggplant won't have quite as much flavor as you would have otherwise hoped for. I was supposed to preheat the oven to 375. I forgot to do that. Do that now. And once it's at temperature, I'll fill both of these sheets with the eggplant, put them in for 5 minutes, flip them over, cook them for another 5 minutes, and then they'll be ready to go into the pan where they will meet the other ingredients. That's the baking process, the pre-baking process of the eggplant before your eggplant parmesan truly begins in earnest. So, I guess, well, it would not be Back to the Future, because the next installments you will see were actually made in the past, so I guess we are going back to the past, even though I'm not the angry video game nerd. Farewell. So now we will move on to the sauce. You may notice I'm wearing a different shirt. That's because I'm filming this on separate days. These are actually 2 different eggplant parmesans that I'm making. The recipe will be the same, but it's 2 separate sessions. Just because this recipe is a bit time consuming, and filming adds a lot of extra time to it. and on the first day I got pretty tired and just didn't feel like filming. Well, actually this is the first day, so you're going to be joining the recipe toward the end of its progress, which is making the sauce. It's one of the last steps, but I'm filming it first. But typically what you want is a Fra Diavolo sauce. That's the best type of sauce for an eggplant parmesan. But one jar typically won't be enough to get you exactly where you want to go. So it's good to make a little extra to put on top, which is what I always do. The top layer I always cover in a sauce that I make myself. And ingredients for that are a couple of vine-ripe tomatoes, 4 garlic cloves, a little bit of olive oil, salt, chili powder, basil leaves, black pepper, celery salt, cumin, rosemary, and garlic powder. Things that you've seen in a lot of the cooking that I've done. This is this type of base that I like to go with, but I find that it works quite well for tomato sauce. The first step, I really should have a cutting board. I did not think to bring one out. Is just cut the very end off of both tomatoes. Because you don't want that stem area to be in there. And once you've done that, you can just squeeze the tomato by hand. And that just kind of mashes it up pretty well. It's really the fastest way of doing it. That's the first tomato. Actually, we'll take the bottom out too, because that gets a little bit of a hardness to it that's not really good in the sauce. So just make sure that you keep your hand within the bowl when you're squeezing the tomatoes. You don't want to shoot tomato juice and seeds all over your house. I've done that before, and it's unpleasant to clean. So I will step aside to wash the tomato off my hand and proceed to the next thing that must be done. Next thing is to just take your garlic cloves, put them in the mincer. And if you don't have a mincer, you can just take a knife, cut the garlic into small little cubes, and then crush it a bit further. With the mincer, you just put it in there, pull down the lever, and it'll come out in small, manageable bits. They're a bit of a pain to clean, but they are a time saver to be sure. And then there'll always be a little bit that's stuck on the bottom and around the inside that you just want to peel out as much as you can. And once again, I have to wash my hands a bit. So now that the tomato sauce and the tomatoes and garlic have been mashed up, just add some olive oil, just a little bit like that. And then just do what feels right when it comes to the spices. Rosemary and the basil leaves. Cumin. Celery salt. A little bit of chili powder, not too much. Garlic powder. Salt. And black pepper. And I probably should have added a chopped onion in there too. Too late to do it now. I mean, it's not too late to do it, but no, I just don't feel like going to get the onions where they are. It's a bit of a walk from here. So this one will be done without onions in the sauce. It's not going to make a huge difference either way. But if you like red onions, I'd say cut up a few, put them in the sauce, but I'm not going to bother with that right now. And then just stir what you have together. And if there's any chunky bits of the tomato, you can mash them down with a wooden spoon. Here's the paste that it, well, let me try getting a different angle. Yeah, there we go. The paste that you end up with, I admit it doesn't look so appetizing right now, but once it mixed in with the eggplant and everything, it does make a very good top. It wants to be top. And that is the sauce step of things, and maybe I'll put some onion in there after, maybe I won't. That will be revealed in the next part of the video. So now we have arrived at the next step, which is putting the eggplant slices that have been coated in the breadcrumbs into the oven. Not to preheat it. You already preheat to 375, but once you're up to heat, you just put them in. And then for 5 minutes on each side they cook. An alternative method is to pan fry them in oil, which is perfectly fine. You can do that if you want to. It's just, it gets a bit messy sometimes. It's easier if you bake them, but either method is fine. And I am in a different shirt again, as I showered in between this and the sauce as I went for a walk, and the weather was quite warm, which explains the different shirt. I will see you again in about 10 minutes. So now we are getting toward the later stages. I'm going to actually assemble everything now. Start out with just putting some olive oil at the bottom of the pan. And just like with the pork chops and the pepper steak and whatever else I cooked, the Cornish hens, I think, you just want to get the whole pan covered at the bottom. Then you start loading in the eggplant slices, which are actually very hot. I would recommend using tongs for this, as I'm burning my hand. And you want your larger pieces to be on your bottom layer. Actually, eggplants I used, they're two kind of small ones. Made a little bit less than I was counting on, but it's still fine for a base layer. Maybe push them like that. All right. So we're going to start with the toppings. get some Fra Diavolo sauce. You could use this brand, Giuseppe Miguel's, or you can use Carbones. It's another brand I like. As long as it's Fra Diavolo, it's good. I'm just going to cover that a bit. Then put on the spinach. You never want the spinach to be the top row. Even when it comes to toppings, you want it to be like on a lower level, because if it gets up too high, it will dry up and scorch, and that's not good for anybody. I have some Moroccan olives, oil cured. So let's get a few more of those. Unfortunately, this jar, they didn't come without pits, so I have to just sort of pit them as I go along. It's probably my least favorite part of this. I mean, taste-wise, it's not. The olives are quite possibly my favorite part, but just getting the pits out is a tedious and annoying task, and your fingers get pretty greasy and dirty in the process. But it is ultimately worth it. Sure that you want to be sure that you get all the pits out, because if you bite into one of those, it's not a good experience. It's painful. Now, the shredded chicken might be one of the more controversial ingredients that I use here, but the reason why I use it is that, for one thing, it's a relatively affordable meat, but for another, puts some protein into the meal, and it sort of takes the place of cheese as a binding agent, because I despise cheese. I think it's disgusting. My wife doesn't hate cheese, but she is allergic to it. But this, when you shred it up really fine, it does kind of have like that binding agent type of roll to it, where it helps to keep everything together. Once you serve it, you'll see once it's done what I mean by that. Of course, you want to drain the liquid first. Then I'm going to add pepperoni to my side. I like pepperoni. My wife does not. So there will be pepperoni on one side of this, but not the other. And be generous with this, because it adds like a lot of flavor to it, and gives you a bit more protein, and adds some color too. It's just all around it just works. Add a little more. Alright, so now we're going to add a bit more sauce on top of that. Then it's time for the second layer of eggplant, which in this case might not cover the entire top. Really didn't get quite the yield I was hoping for with this eggplant. These eggplants, they were kind of small. Because normally one large eggplant you can get a full meal out of with this. I got 2 medium to small eggplants, and it doesn't quite cover the top. But put some more spinach on there. Some more olives. There we pits, make sure you get rid of them. In retrospect, I wish I had de-pitted the olives off camera, because this is adding a rather lengthy and pointless, well, it's not pointless, but I imagine it's not that entertaining to watch part of the video, but that's how life is sometimes. I guess not everything is exciting. Sometimes you just have to watch people remove pits from olives if you want to get to the more zesty parts of life. It's visual, it's like being on hold, only visually, I suppose, this segment of the video. That's enough on the olives. Now for another layer of pepperoni. And once that's done, which it almost is, I'm going to add the other sauce, the sauce that you saw me make earlier. I've put it into this container. I'll just pour that on the top here. And you just spread that around on the top. You want to work the spinach in a bit more. I mean, as I said before, this didn't yield as much eggplant as I was hoping it would. As a result, the spinach is a bit more exposed, which means when it's finished, it's going to be a bit, at least the spinach at the top, will get a bit dry and crackly, which isn't good, but we'll still have plenty of good spinach in the intermediate and lower levels. And then, before putting it in the oven, which is still at 375, add the second can of chicken. One thing that I suppose is a bit confusing is the fact that, although I got a lot less, far fewer eggplant slices than I usually do from this recipe, I somehow ran out of sauce to a worse degree. Those two things don't really go together unless I was just really off on all counts. So we'll see what we have left in the original jar of sauce. There's still rather small amount left in there. We can use a rubber spatula to really get those last few bits out so that you don't waste any money. I mean, this is like $10 a jar, so you want to make sure that you use every last bit and then just smooth it on down. So this is going to go into the oven for 40 minutes, right in the middle rack. shortly after that's done, while it's cooling, I will put these ciabatta rolls on the broiler settings so that they crisp up a bit. We'll do them with some olive oil and rosemary. It will be good. So I will see you again when it's time for that. Farewell for now. Well, the eggplant Parmesan is done. I will now take it out and see how it is doing, how it came out. The lid is over here. It's just about finished. You can kind of tell from the way that it looks. You can see how I was saying before, the chicken sort of holds the role that the cheese often does with traditional eggplant Parmesan. I mean, I guess technically it's not Parmesan if there's no cheese in it, but I do not know. I mean, Parmesan is the cheese, Parmesan is a different spelling, but I believe that's they're one and the same. But it doesn't matter because I hate cheese. So the next thing that must be done is to get the broiler going. And put the ciabatta rolls on there for put the ciabatta rolls on there for some crisping. Ciabatta bread or ciabatta rolls, however you're having them. Always better when they've got that crispy crunch to them. I'll be making a simple olive oil and rosemary dip for them. The time it takes for these to broil varies. I put them in before it's officially at the broil temperature just to save a bit of time. And I continually check in on them throughout the cooking period, or I guess continuously would be continuous versus continual. I think continually would be the correct term. I continually check on the, I believe continually, it's good to check on the ciabatta rolls throughout the cooking, just to make sure that they don't burn. You also want to turn them over so they can get equally crispy on all angles. So when you put it all together, this is what it comes out to. You can see the eggplant Parmesan here, the eggplant, spinach, chicken, olives, and pepperoni. Have the ciabatta bread, which is too hot to eat just yet. Then we have the rosemary, celery salt, and olive oil dip, which will be used. And also there's lemonade. It is Full Circle Market organic lemonade. And that is the conclusion of the dairy-free eggplant Parmesan instruction video. Farewell.